So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the topDNS Best Practice webinar, a partnership to empower domain name registries to disrupt CSAM. There are still people joining the room, and we will begin shortly. Please stay on the line. There are still people joining the room. We will begin shortly. Please stay on the line. There are still people joining, but we are now 2 minutes after the hour, so let's get things started. So again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the topDNS Best Practice webinar, a partnership to empower domain name registries to disrupt CSAM. My name is Lars Steffen. I'm head of international digital infrastructures and resilience at ECO, the Association of the Internet Industry, and I'll be your host today. We have two speakers today, and I warmly welcome Will Few. He is Development Officer at the Internet Watch Foundation, and Brian Symbolic, Chief Legal and Policy Officer at the Public Interest Registry, the registry of .org. So welcome. This webinar is, as you can see in the title, one webinar in a series of several webinars. We already have a number of webinars in the topDNS Best Practice series where you can see different approaches, how to fight abuse online, how to create evidence, and many other topics we cover at the topDNS initiative. If you would like to learn more about topDNS, please go to the website topdns.eco, where you can find all the partners and all our activities, and where you can also see the recordings of the previous webinars and also all documents that we created in this initiative that has been created two and a half years ago to fight DNS abuse at the ECO Association. And just going through the housekeeping rules, this webinar is of course being recorded. The recording will be available after the meeting. You are muted throughout the webinar. You can ask questions via the questions pod on the right-hand side of your screen via the GoToWebinar dashboard. Of course, you can also raise your questions verbally. So you can click the raise your hand button on the right-hand side of your screen. We will unmute you, and before you start, ask your question, please state your name and your affiliation. And after the webinar, you will be presented a short survey where you can provide feedback, which is also always very helpful for us to learn more about your experience during the webinar and how to improve our services. Last but not least, the next time you can meet a topDNS on site will be in 2 weeks' time at the Nordic Domain Days, where we will organize the DNS abuse workshop during Nordic Domain Days, where we would like to discuss how to facilitate closer collaboration between registries, registrars, and cloud and hosting service providers. So if you're on site and interested in getting to know topDNS and interested in having this discussion, please feel free to go to the Nordic Domain Days website and to register and meet you there. But with this, I would like to hand over to the first part of the webinar to Will Few, and he will introduce you to the IWF and the work that they are doing on fighting CSAM. Will, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lars. And yeah, thank you very much for inviting me along. Thanks also to Sasha and of course to Brian from PIR. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to be talking a little bit about what we do and what we're doing with PIR. So obviously just to just to start it off, this is child sexual abuse going to be talking about. It's not a pleasant topic, but I really do appreciate you all coming along to hear about it and hear about what you can do to help. But just a warning that it is quite a graphic topic, and yeah, as I say, not a particularly pleasant one at the best of times, but a very, very important thing. So yeah, thank you again for coming along. So we are the Internet Watch Foundation. We're a not-for-profit NGO, and we help victims of child sexual abuse by finding and removing the images and videos of their abuse from the internet. That's our goal. That's our vision as an organisation, is an internet completely free of child sexual abuse material, images and videos. Now, we take reports which are received by our analysts here at our offices, our locations here in Cambridge, in the UK. And our analysts, they assess those reports, and if criminal, if they are child sexual abuse material, we take the steps to remove them from the internet. We work specifically, we have an MOU specifically with the National Police Chiefs Council here in the UK. So we are the official takedown body for anything hosted within the UK. And that's really the gold standard way, of course, of getting rid of content, of criminal content, is with the host. And that's what we do. So if it's hosted within the UK, we are legally allowed to issue that takedown notice. Often cases, sort of over 99.9% of the time, it's hosted outside the UK, in which case we work through an organisation called InHope, which is the international collection of reporting hotlines throughout the world. And we are, that's essentially how we work with them. We pass those reports onto those countries, onto those hotlines, and they remove the content in line with their laws and jurisdictions. Where there isn't a hotline, we work with Interpol to ensure that the content is removed. We are also the reporting portal for 53 nations around the world, which sort of gives a place for anyone reporting within those nations to report directly to us, to our analysts here in Cambridge in the UK. And as with any other reports, if criminal, we take the steps to remove it from the internet. So that's just a brief little starter for us. I would like to sort of start with a bit of a case study of one of the children that we see in the images that our analysts see, unfortunately, on a daily basis. So this is the story of Olivia. She's a small girl, bright, big green eyes, golden brown hair. And unfortunately, we saw her being abused at around the age of 3 years old. This was in a familiar place to her, likely her home. And there was someone in there that she should have trusted, an older person, an older man, someone that she knew clearly, and yeah, as I say, should have trusted. Unfortunately, over the course of about 5 years, we saw him abuse her on multiple occasions. He would always obfuscate his face. He was never able to be identified visually. And unfortunately, we saw Olivia grow up with abuse happening to her. In every image we saw, she would be getting slightly older and older. Now, we know she was rescued by police, aged 8, which is fantastic, but that was years ago. We still see that abuse of Olivia happening. Unfortunately, we also see it partly in a commercial aspect as well. So there are people making money out of Olivia's abuse, out of those images of her torture and rape. And then that last bullet point is sort of really the key one, really. I wish I could tell you that Olivia was unique in this. Unfortunately, she isn't. There are thousands like her. So just to give you a bit of a scale of the problem in 2023, so we recently launched our annual report last week for everything that we saw on the internet with regards to child sexual abuse in 2023. And of that, we saw 392,000 reports come to us. Now, each one of those reports will have had eyes on from one of our analysts here in our hotline. Every single one, eyes on, and of those 392,000 reports, over 275,000 reports were confirmed to contain images or videos of child sexual abuse material. Now, in each one of those reports might have one image of child sexual abuse. It might have thousands of images and videos of child sexual abuse. So in terms of the number of images and videos we took down, it will be well within the millions. The key discrepancy between those two is we do take reports from the public. They're not always on remit. And that's really how we get the first lot of our reports is from the public. But we are also able to proactively search the internet for child sexual abuse material. We were asked to do so by the Prime Minister of the UK 10 years ago in 2014, and that's really where we get the bulk of our content, is from our proactive searches. Our analysts are the best at what they do. They know where to find this content and how to most effectively remove it. Now, one trend which we have been seeing growing since 2020, since lockdown, is the rise of self-generated child sexual abuse material. This is where a child is in usually the safety of their own home, perhaps their bedroom, maybe the bathroom, and they're being groomed, coerced, tricked, exploited from someone that isn't who they say they are on the other side of their laptop or of their phone, into performing sexual acts on themselves. Unbeknownst to that child, that offender on the other side is recording everything and then publishing it, and again, often for commercial gain. This, although it was something we were noticing before lockdown, it really is now the majority of what we see. A fairly nasty trend that we saw last year in 2023 is the rise in reports of this happening to 7 to 10-year-olds. So of that, 104,000 were of 7 to 10-year-olds that had been groomed, as I say, coerced, tricked into performing sexual acts on themselves. So that's a real increase. Usually the age range we've seen most of is 11 to 13-year-olds. It's mostly girls as well. And unfortunately, that category A is the most severe type of abuse that we deal with, according to UK Sentencing Council guidelines. That has also been on the rise. So when we're collecting data, when we're actioning content, we're able to collect an awful lot of data. So that data we're able to turn into data sets, into lists, into alerts, and provide on to our members. As I say, we're a not-for-profit organisation. We get most of our funding from our members, from those in the internet industry. So those are people like Amazon, like Apple, like Google, Meta, TikTok, all those guys, and we're also very pleased to have quite a few members within the domain registry space. So people like VeriSign, Identity Digital, XYZ, and GoDaddy Registry. And we're also very pleased to have PIR as one of our members too, and they have sponsored the use of two of our key services, one of our lists and one of our alerts, which are specific to the domain registry industry, specifically so those TLDs can be protected. Now those are, I'm just going to go into a bit of detail about those. Firstly, it's the domain alerts. So if a registry signs up to take the services via the sponsorship from PIR, one of the services they can receive is the domain alerts. And essentially that's an alert every time we see the instance of child sexual abuse identified on a G or CC TLD within that registry's TLD portfolio. That's the key thing. It might be dedicated, in which case, it can of course be suspended, but it can of course be from an abused site as well. So a site that is completely non-complicit, doesn't want that content there, but maybe that site offers user-generated uploads, and in which case we'll send that alert to the registry to note of the abuse that we have seen. Now, this might often just be one report on one web page within a site, and in which case, it acts just as a sort of an FYI to sort of give you an overview of the abuse taking place within a certain TLD. But we know it can be useful. Of course, actioning content at TLD level, at the domain registry level, isn't a perfect fit. We know it can be quite a good way, especially the suspension of it. We know that sites, they do hop around from host to host, so the full string will remain the same, the full domain will remain the same. But if we're able to suspend it at the registry level, then that really does help with keeping that content offline. It might be as well on an abused site that there are a lot of reports coming through from that site, and in which case the registry may want to look at that, at the volume and the regularity of the alerts coming through, and take a decision on their own. We've then also got the TLD hopping lists as well. Now, this is a list of strings that we have noticed where we have seen content, particular brands, particular sites hopping from one TLD to another. Now, this is specifically dedicated and or commercial content. So this is sort of the worst of the worst. So if we see it there, the example that we've got there is Watch Foundation as the string. And then, yeah, we've got it on .info. So if we see it, watch foundation.info, as we say, we'll work with the host to get that removed, which is great. But then we might see it pop up, Watch Foundation again, the exact same site, the exact same content, but it's on .net. Again, we work through the host, we get that removed. And then that third time we see it come up, that's when we put that string, Watch Foundation, on the list. And that's the key thing, is it really is, it's just that exclusively commercial dedicated content, and it has had those 3 hops each time. As I say, with all our reports, it has had eyes on from one of our analysts to confirm that it is child sexual abuse material. So it's a good one. It's a good one to prevent that abuse from coming live onto your TLD. Just to give you a bit of an idea of the sponsorship so far. So we've been going for, I think it's just under 2 months or so as yet. And yeah, 9 registries so far signed up, which has allowed for, millions of domains to have that new protection, which is fantastic. Since launching it as well, we've also had 3 current members of the IWF get in touch and take the extra service, the domain hopping list, which means there is quite now a significant amount more covered, which is great news. And again, those are registries that cover GTLDs and CCTLDs, both covered. In terms of the process as we see it, we hope it's a very straightforward one. Essentially, there's an application form where you just tell us a little bit about yourselves. We then run a slight bit of due diligence, and once that's all complete, we ask you to sign a license, which is just a couple of pages long, which is direct by Adobe sign. And once that's signed, then we can get you going on services, and you can take one or both. And please do get in touch. And likewise, there is further ways if you do want to support us. That's becoming a member in your own rights, or donating and doing things within your organization to help raise money for us. And you can be assured that every penny, every cent that comes to us will go directly towards the running of our hotline and helping us in our daily challenge of removing child sexual abuse material. So that's it from me. I'll now end the slideshow and pass over to Brian.
Yes, thank you. And Brian also just shared the link in the chat directly to the service. And
thanks, Brian.
And yes, and with this, we would like to hand over to Brian.
Thank you so much, Lars. Hello, everyone. I am Brian Symbolic. I'm Chief Legal and Policy Officer at PIR, Public Interest Registry. First, thank you, Lars, and to ECO and topDNS for having me. And thank you, Will, for your presentation and the amazing work that the Internet Watch Foundation does. So if Will did a great job summarizing what the program is, what the sponsored programs are, I'm here to talk to you about why is PIR sponsoring the programs, and also as a sort of consumer, as a registry operator, how do you implement these programs? Next slide, please. So first, just a little bit of background for those of you who are not familiar with Public Interest Registry, or PIR. We are the nonprofit registry operator of .org, as well as several other mission-driven top-level domains, TLDs like .charity, .foundation, etc. .org has approximately 10.9 million domains under management, and of all the large legacy top-level domains, we tend to be the cleanest, the least abused, and that is by design. Because one of the things that sort of sets us apart is that we are a nonprofit. We, like the Internet Watch Foundation, we're a nonprofit and we have a charitable mission. And part of that charitable mission is really leaning into the anti-abuse field and helping to create practices, not just for our own TLDs, but for the industry as a whole. We've done that in a few ways. Many of you might be familiar with an initiative called the DNS Abuse Institute, which we created 3 years ago, that provides free tools to registries, registrars, as well as people that want to report DNS abuse or technical abuses online. We also helped to create a document called the Framework to Address Abuse, which I'll be speaking on a little here today, which has more than 50 registries, both from the GTLD space as well as the CCTLD space, and domain name registrars that serves as a sort of code of conduct for what a registry operator or a registrar must do with certain forms of DNS abuse that's now codified in our agreements with ICANN, as well as what we should do when we come across certain instances of website content abuses. And one of the ways that one of those categories is child sexual abuse material, which is why we're here today. Next slide, please. So Will touched on something that's really important, that CSAM, really the gold standard, I think Will said, is that it should be addressed at the hosting level. And that's true. But the question is, what happens when that doesn't happen? When a downstream actor hasn't remediated, registries and registrars are often looked to as a sort of backstop to look at website content abuse. And there's often pressure from a number of different actors to have us serve in that role. There's obviously problems with that approach. There's challenges when you use the domain name system to deal with website content abuses. And I think that the Framework to Address Abuse summarize this well, is that registries and registrars don't have the ability to surgically remove a particular piece of content. We can't only remove the bad part of a domain. We act at the entire domain name level, or we don't act at all from a technical perspective. And there's a real danger when you do that of creating collateral damage. And I'll give you a real world example. If you think of the domain name Craigslist.org, which at least or Craigslist, in the US at least, that's based on .org. If someone were to post a post on Craigslist offering to sell narcotics, or uploaded a CSAM image to Craigslist, and this is just hypothetical, we actually don't have any problems with Craigslist. But if someone were to do so, then as the registry, the only technical option we have is to suspend the domain name. And yes, that post would not be accessible any longer via the domain name system. But while that's true, that's also true of the tens of millions of pieces of legitimate or benign content that's on the rest of Craigslist.org. So it's truly a nuclear option when you're using the domain name system to look at website content abuses. Next slide, please. Now that said, the other piece of the framework, and certainly we hold true to this at PIR, is that while that's true, there are some categories of website content abuses where the scale of harms is so great that if other actors aren't doing something, we can't just sit on our hands and do nothing. And those categories that are enumerated in the framework are child sexual abuse materials, distribution of opioids, narcotics online, human trafficking, and specific and credible incitements to violence. And so obviously, next slide, please. We're here today to talk about child sexual abuse material. So PIR, we have been members of the Internet Watch Foundation since 2018. And since working with IWF, in the 5 years after working with IWF, we had more than 5,700 URLs sent to us as containing child sexual abuse material. Juxtapose that to the 5 years before working with IWF, that number was 4. We had 4 URLs alleged to have CSAM referred to us through our abuse inbox, and 5,700 since working with IWF. So we sort of discovered early on in our partnership with IWF, it's not that the CSAM wasn't there. It's that we didn't have the tools necessary to identify it and didn't know what to do when we did. So that's sort of what brings us here today. We're here to share this critical tool. What IWF has enabled us to identify and remove CSAM when we can. We want to offer that to all gTLD and ccTLD registries. Next slide, please. So Will has gone over what the programs are. I just want to note that from our perspective, we view these as sort of opposite sides of the same coin, where there is both a proactive approach that's being offered here, as well as the reactive approach with the domain alerts, where registries are notified of CSAM, as well as an element to help prevent the spread of CSAM with the distribution of the TLD hopping list. And we're doing this because PIR, as I said, we are a nonprofit with a charitable mission, and we think that this program can help registries do their part in trying to eliminate child sexual abuse materials in their TLDs, and when that's added up across the DNS. Next slide, please. So domain alerts, let's talk about the programs. So domain alerts is the reactive component of this program. And when I referenced that 5,700 URLs that were sent to us, that's what I was referring to. Those were domain alerts that we processed from the IWF. So what happens is IWF will send the registry defanged URLs. There's no images, there's no clickable content even. What the registry then does, at least what we do, is we work with the registrar to work with the registrant in turn to get that content removed. Because as Will noted, overwhelmingly, at least for .org, at least in our experience, overwhelmingly the URLs that can get sent to us are on benign file sharing sites. They're not sites dedicated even to distribution of pornography, let alone child sexual abuse materials. They're sort of generic file sharing sites where a user has violated the terms of that site and uploaded some child sexual abuse material. So our goal, to be clear, the goal of domain alerts is not suspension of domain names. It's to get the content removed so that we don't have to suspend the domain name. Now, of course, there are limited instances where there are sites that are dedicated to CSAM, and IWF will flag that for us. And in those instances, we don't hesitate. We're very happy to directly suspend the names in that case. Next slide, please. So on the on the preventative side, there's also the distribution of the TLD hopping list. And I also want to give a shout out to Identity Digital, who PIR, Identity Digital, and IWF sort of developed the TLD hopping list as a pilot program a few years ago to protect both against the registration of these domain names, but also helps protect the reputation of the TLD. You don't want your TLD associated with sites dedicated for commercial distribution of CSAM. So this is a very easy program to implement. If you work for a registry, you know how simple and straightforward it is to either reserve the name, making it unregisterable, or of course you can also register the name in the registry's name. Whatever mechanism is fine, as long as you get the TLD hopping list, you make it so that those names that are on that list are not able to be registered by the bad guys. Because as Will pointed out, there's sort of brand recognition with these sites that are dedicated to CSAM. And when it jumps from one TLD to the other with the same name, just in a different TLD with the same content, the end consumer of that CSAM associates with that brand. So if you take that domain name off of the DNS and prevent just hopping from one top level domain to another, obviously it doesn't solve the problem of child sexual abuse materials online. But what it does do is it introduces friction and makes it sort of harder for that bad guy to just use that same brand and jump from top level name domain to top-level domain. And you think about it, the more registries that participate in this TLD hopping list, the more real estate that's covered so that those domains can't continue to propagate across the DNS. I did want to note too that this is a new service for IWF. So even if you're a registry that's already an existing member, please do existing member of IWF, please do contact IWF to see how you can enroll to receive the TLD hopping list. With that, I think I can hand things back over to you, Lars, so that we can hopefully get some questions.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Yeah, and this is the call to the floor. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the questions pod or to raise your hand. And just very quick and simple, if I'm now interested in this sponsoring program, who should I contact? Where should I go to?
Will, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can just get in touch with me or anyone at the team. That's no problem at all. I mean, likewise, you can also get in touch with Brian. I don't think there's any issue there. I had a slide up there on the processes of how to get going on it. The first thing that sort of we'll do, if it comes to me, if it comes to Brian, if it comes to someone else in the IWF team, is we'll send you towards that application form, just where you give that information about yourself, about the company, and about the TLDs to be covered. And if you want one service or if you want both, just sort of basic information like that.
And that's a super important point to make, Will. It's not an all or nothing. You don't have to receive both services.
That's it. Absolutely.
If you're only comfortable, on the preventive side and just want to take the TLD hopping list and not deal with domain alerts, that's a totally fine option. I also want to note that it's not, I remember the first time CSAM was alleged to come through the abuse desk, and it's an intimidating process. You're like, what do I do? What do I do now? And so if you sign up for these services, you're not really starting from scratch. We've provided IWF with some materials that serve as guidance. It's not legal advice. It's just how we have handled these in the past, including like SLAs on when you want the content removed. So you start with a sort of a playbook so that you don't have to start from scratch and figure out what to do on your own. You at least have some sort of guidance as to what to do when you receive your first domain alert, to the extent you receive any from IWF.
And do you also create a community of those who are now participating in the sponsoring program, or is this something that you handle individually with every party that is participating?
I suppose we'd handle it individually with each one. I mean, in terms of the lists, the TLD hopping lists, it's the same list that everyone gets. There's no difference in terms of what's on that list compared to what PIR get, compared to what anyone gets. The domain alerts themselves, they're obviously very bespoke to that TLD. So every time we send an alert, it will be specifically that we found content on that TLD.
And Lars, if I could also just note too that yes. I want to be clear that while PIR is sponsoring these programs, that's the extent of our involvement. Although I'm happy to answer any questions on how we operationalize these things, we won't receive any other TLDs domain alerts. We're not involved in any way. We're not part of the agreement, the licensing agreement between any other registry and IWF. We're really just here to help get it set up, and then we are out of the process. All of those interactions happen between IWF and the registry. I know if I was another registry, I wouldn't want some third party getting my reports. So that is, just wanted to clear the air that is not part of the equation.
Perfect. Here. Perfect. Thank you very much. We've got one hand from Jutta Kroll. Jutta, would you like to take the floor?
Yes, thank you, Lars, for giving me the floor. As a representative of an NGO from Germany, I'm wondering what could we do in that case? Fundraising is a difficult issue always, but would it be useful to campaign for registries to to join the effort? And do you have anything that you could provide us for campaigning, like advocating for okay, registries, go on and join the program?
I can jump in on this and just note that, yes, please, as you're having conversations with registries, and please encourage them. I would ask them a few questions. One, are you already an IWF member? If not, think about joining. There's great benefits of being a member. But if not, and if you don't want to be a member, that's from this program's perspective, that's okay. You can still receive these services at no cost. So please encourage them to take advantage of these services, because again, the more registries that participate, if every registry participated in this, it would mean coverage for the entire domain name system, which is amazing, which is excellent. As you know, Will's already pointed out, there's now 16+ million domains that are covered that weren't just 3 months ago. So we would love, we're sponsoring this. We would love to see the entire DNS covered by this program. I think as far as pointing them to resources, the link that's in the chat there, that has a lot of information for that registry about what these programs are, and they'll understand what that means. And also, again, I'm happy to serve as a resource to any registry that's curious about implementing either program. But Will, I don't know if you had any.
Much. Thank you.
Absolutely, I couldn't echo Brian's points more. Yeah, please do share it as far and as wide as you possibly can. That would be fantastic if that's all right. Yeah, our comms team as well do a lot of fantastic work of sort of pushing the content out on socials. So obviously, if you're able to reshare all that kind of stuff, that would be fantastic too.
Yes, thank you.
So
yes, please.
I just wanted to say thank you to both. Thank you.
Thanks, Uta.
Okay, thank you for your question. And I just shared the information that Will's colleagues just shared in the internal chat. I put it to the public one, and I think Brian also just did it. So thank you very much for this. Are there any further questions from the floor? I don't see any, so I don't mind to give everybody a few more minutes back of the time of the day. So Will, Brian, thank you very much for introducing us to your program, and I think this is very encouraging, and it's a great way to tackle one of the worst types of abuse that we have out there, if it's not the worst type of abuse out there. And I think every effort that is that we as an industry can provide to fight this type of abuse is more than welcome, and to lower the barrier to have access to information to fight this type of abuse. ECHO is also via InHope involved in this work. We are running the German-speaking tip line in that regard as well. So I also shared this information with our colleagues in that network. So we will also spread the word through these types of channels. So thank you very much for setting up this great collaboration. And I think everyone who's now on this webinar will be encouraged to share the information, to make it available. And before we just wanted to close the meeting, Alan, you just raised your hand. Alan, the floor is yours.
I'm so sorry. It was just as you were saying that about encouragement. This is not about me or Clean DNS, but if any person out there is a member of Clean DNS, we will also be able to do these escalations on your behalf as well. So just to let you know that if you want to talk to us and get these onto this list, please just reach out to anybody at Clean DNS and we will get you in touch with the right people and have a real easy way of you to deal with this in future. So apologies, not about Clean DNS, it's about making sure that the most registries and registries have the access to this.
Perfect, great. Thank you for the useful and very important comment. Thank you, Alan. So with this, I think everything has been said about this great project. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for presenting. Hopefully, we can reconvene in a few months to see the progress and the outreach that you've done and the more improved fight on CSAM online. Would love to see you back and talking about the results. And with this, thank you again. Thank you for everybody who participated in this webinar. Thank you for your interest. Please participate in the survey that you will see right after the webinar. And with this, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.